Hey, Matt here. Welcome back to 10-Minute Business in my definitely real office. And last time we talked about customer relationships on the right side of the canvas. This time we're going to talk about channels. Channels is, in my experience, one of the easier things for people to pick up intuitively because it's kind of your standard marketing 101 piece. It's how do you get your product to your customer? How do you get your service to your customer? And the people can mostly get this without too much thought. I also like to include the advertising and promotion channels here as well. So this is almost like two parts of the 4 P's of marketing. I think you could safely put into this this little block here. So I'm going to break it down into how do you communicate your value, and then how do you deliver on that value. So very literally speaking, how do you deliver it to them? If you remember, we are using a high-tech kids toy that over the last couple of videos has morphed into an iPad more or less, and that will continue here. You can invoke images of the Apple Store as I talk about this. So in terms of how do you communicate your value, you can think about it like your promotional activities and your awareness building activities. So you want to think about which social media platforms do you want to engage with? What does your website and e-commerce look like? Is it providing the best experience? And we've already talked about that a little bit with relationships. There's some overlap here. You may also want to consider print or physical ads. This is your newspapers. This could be your traditional advertising as well, like a TV advertising, depending on how broad your campaign is and what your resources are. You could think about this like bus station ads, billboards, all that sort of things you see in real life, in the real world. Then you also could consider direct sales. This would be phone calls. This would be door-to-door. This would be in-person walk-ins. This is just general. At this point, obviously, you're not going to sell door-to-door iPads, I don't think, although maybe you could. So there's a bunch of different ways that you could actually physically sell your product, raise awareness. You could also consider things like brand associations, thought leadership, collaborations with other influencers in the space, with other brands in the space to help grow your profile, and just general profile building. Is it a YouTube channel, right? Basically, one of the ways that we're advertising, for lack of a better word, the Entrepreneurship Center, is me doing these videos. So this is a general awareness piece that's not directly tied to any revenue generating activities, but it is part of our overall profile building. So you need to think about all these things together in a cohesive strategy to make sure that it works for you. And then how do you actually deliver on that value? I'm not going to worry so much about the true supply chain, like where do you source your processor? How does that make it to the factory? All that sort of stuff. That's a little bit outside of the scope of this. But it's more, how does the customer purchase and how do they get it in their hands? So this could be a combination usually of all of these things. It's retail stores, it's e-commerce that then gets shipped directly to the customer from a warehouse. You could have pop-up shops. You could work with distributors. Say if you were in a more of a science and technology space, potentially you're going to just list your product with a distributor that they then sell on your behalf to their customers. You could have big box retail partners. So this could be an example like I could go buy an iPad from Best Buy. I could buy an iPad from Amazon. I could buy an iPad from the Apple Store. So there's many ways for me to get that product. You could look at mobile apps. Some companies have their own applications that they use. Or if it's a slightly different business model that we're not talking about, or a very different one, maybe the mobile app is the main way that they get your product. Maybe that is the product, right? So you need to think about this very specifically based on the kind of product that you're using. Then if you had service-based businesses, there's phone calls, there's in-person, there's mobile apps again, there's virtual, there's YouTube content like this, there's education platforms, there's interactive games, all of this sort of stuff. So this gets very specific based on the exact business model and product and service that you're positioning. So I've taken this, I've put it back into our table or our canvas. For our example, it's probably going to be some combination of web with e-commerce, direct to consumer, D2C. You probably have some sort of exclusive storefront network. You likely have some sort of a retail partnership with big box retailers like Best Buy that also leverage their stores and their website. You could have TV commercials for your advertising. You could have billboards, traditional media sources. Maybe you have a huge budget and you decide to have the Super Bowl halftime show, right? There's lots of options here depending on your budget and your reach. Probably I would be on all social media platforms. But if I wanted to really target it, based on our user group here, probably Instagram, maybe a little bit of Facebook, although maybe also TikTok to drive it from the kid side, right? Because we have two users here. Sometimes it's more of a bottom-up approach where you make the kid want the thing and then they go to the parents. Or maybe it's the other way where you go to the parents and they want the thing on behalf of their kid. Ideally, you're doing both, right? So that there's a connection in between there. Probably some sort of influencer collaboration. You have people, like there's a lot of cool YouTube channels that run this sort of content all the time. You could look at that. You could look at contests or engagement with your user group. I think I remember a few years ago, Apple, as an example, had user submitted videos that they would then profile and have prizes and that sort of thing for. So again, it's about how do you raise awareness about your products and services and your value, and then how do you actually literally get that value to your customer. So that's the way that we look at channels. I'm going to finish this section with the revenue streams at the bottom. This is one of my favorite ones because there's so many different ways to generate revenue. It's a lot of fun to talk about. So come back for that in the next video. Thanks very much.